I'm Margaret Thompson, and for 15 years, I've been what everyone called just a secretary to CEO Richard Davis. Yesterday, his daughter fired me with one brutal sentence: "You're just a secretary, you're irrelevant." I smiled and said, "No problem." 1 week later, they lost 80% of their accounts. But Jessica Davis had no idea who she was really dealing with. Let me take you back to where this all started. Every morning at 6 a.m. sharp, I'd arrive at Davis Corporation before anyone else. The building would be silent, just the hum of fluorescent lights and the distant rumble of the city waking up. I'd brew Mr. Davis's coffee, Colombian, 2 sugars, splash of cream, exactly how he'd liked it for the past decade and a half. By the time he walked through those glass doors at 7:30, his schedule would be perfectly organized, his calls prioritized, and any potential crisis already handled. "Morning, Margaret," he'd always say, never looking up from his phone. "What's the damage today?" And I'd give him the rundown. 3 client calls returned overnight. The Henderson contract moved to his desk for signature. That supply chain issue in Michigan? Already resolved, with a quick call to our vendor. Mr. Davis would nod, grab his coffee, and disappear into his corner office, trusting that everything would run smoothly. Because it always did. What nobody knew, what I'd never told anyone in 15 years, was that I had an MBA from Harvard Business School. Class of 2009. Graduated summa cum laude with a concentration in strategic management. I could have been running my own company by now, could have been the CEO making the decisions instead of organizing someone else's calendar. But life had other plans. My mother was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's when I was 28. She'd raised me alone after Dad left when I was 7. Worked 2 jobs to put me through school. Never missed a single parent-teacher conference or soccer game. When the doctors said she needed full-time care, there wasn't even a question. I took the first stable job I could find, executive assistant to Richard Davis, and I stayed. "Maggie, baby," my mother would say during her lucid moments, her hands shaking as she tried to button her cardigan. "You're too smart to be answering someone else's phone." "I'm exactly where I need to be, Mom," I'd tell her, helping with the buttons. "Besides, you always taught me to work like nobody else could do what I do." She'd smile then, that proud smile that made everything worth it. That's my girl. The truth was, over the years, I'd become something far beyond a secretary. When the Peterson account was about to walk because of a billing error, I was the one who flew to Chicago and spent 3 days rebuilding that relationship from scratch. When our main supplier tried to jack up prices by 30%, I found us a better deal in Taiwan and negotiated terms that saved the company $500,000 annually. When that sexual harassment lawsuit threatened to destroy our reputation, I was the one who quietly implemented new training protocols and mediated a fair settlement that kept us out of the headlines. But I never asked for credit. I never demanded recognition. I just did the work and watched Richard Davis take the praise, knowing that my mother was getting the best care money could buy. And that was enough. Then Jessica Davis graduated from business school. I remember the day she first walked into the office like she owned the place, which, technically, she would someday. 28 years old, fresh MBA from Wharton, wearing a suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. She had her father's sharp chin and her mother's calculating eyes, but none of the humility that comes from actually working your way up. "So you're the famous Margaret," she said, not extending her hand, just looking me up and down like I was a piece of furniture she was considering replacing. Dad talks about you constantly, his little helper. Little helper. The phrase hit me like a slap, but I kept my expression neutral. I prefer executive assistant, Miss Davis. Is there something I can help you with today? She laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Actually, yes. I'm going to be taking a more active role in operations. Dad thinks it's time I learned the business from the ground up. Her eyes narrowed, which means I'll be evaluating everyone's contribution to the company. The way she said contribution made it clear she thought mine was minimal. Over the next few weeks, Jessica made her presence known. She'd sit in on client calls, interrupt meetings with suggestions, and constantly question established procedures. But what really concerned me were the conversations I overheard. Dad, half these people have been here since the Stone Age, she said one afternoon, her voice carrying through the thin walls of the conference room. When was the last time anyone evaluated whether we actually need all these positions? Jessica, these employees are the backbone of this company, Mr. Davis replied, but his voice lacked conviction. The backbone? Dad, we're paying a secretary $65,000 a year. Do you know what we could get for that salary? A junior analyst, a social media coordinator, someone who actually adds value. I stopped typing, my fingers frozen over the keyboard. $65,000. She was talking about me. Margaret has been with us for 15 years, Mr. Davis said weakly. Exactly. 15 years of answering phones and scheduling meetings. Dad, I ran the numbers. We could automate half of what she does and outsource the rest for a fraction of the cost. That night, I went home to my small apartment and sat beside my mother's bed. She was sleeping peacefully, the home health aide reading quietly in the corner. I looked at the medical bills stacked on my nightstand, the careful budget I'd maintained for years, the life I'd built around stability and loyalty. What would you do, Mom? I whispered. She stirred slightly, her eyes opening for just a moment. Fight, baby, she mumbled. Don't let them underestimate you. Then she was asleep again, and I was alone with the weight of what was coming. 3 weeks later, it happened. I was updating the client database when Jessica's voice cut through the office like a knife. Margaret, conference room, now. The entire office went silent. 23 employees stopped what they were doing and watched as I walked toward the glass-walled conference room where Jessica sat behind a stack of papers, her expression cold and satisfied. Close the door, she said, without looking up. I did, very aware that everyone could still see us through the glass walls. This was intentional. She wanted an audience. Margaret, we're restructuring the administrative department, she began, her tone clinical. As part of our modernization efforts, we've determined that your position is redundant. The words hit me, but I'd been preparing for this moment for weeks. I see. When is my last day? She looked up then, surprised by my calm response. Today, actually. We've prepared a severance package. 2 weeks' pay, plus your accrued vacation time. She slid a folder across the table. I think you'll find it's quite generous. I opened the folder. 2 weeks after 15 years of 60-hour work weeks, of saving this company millions, of sacrificing my own career ambitions. 2 weeks. There's just one thing I don't understand, Miss Davis, I said, closing the folder and meeting her eyes. Did your father approve this decision? Her cheeks flushed slightly. My father has given me full authority over operational decisions. This is a business, Margaret, not a charity. You're just a secretary. You're irrelevant. The words hung in the air between us. Through the glass walls, I could see my coworkers watching, some with sympathy, others with the careful neutrality of people protecting their own jobs. I stood up slowly, smoothed my skirt, and smiled. A real smile, not the polite mask I'd worn for years, but something genuine and almost relieved. No problem, Miss Davis, I said. I'll clean out my desk and be gone within the hour. Her eyes narrowed. She'd expected tears, protests, maybe even begging. Instead, I was acting like she'd just done me a favor, which, in a way, she had. I walked to my desk, my immaculate, perfectly organized desk that had been the nerve center of Davis Corporation for 15 years, and began packing my personal items. A photo of my mother from before the diagnosis. A small plant that had somehow survived under fluorescent lights. The coffee mug Mr. Davis had given me for my 10th anniversary. World's best assistant. Margaret, came a voice behind me. I turned to see Linda from accounting. Her eyes filled with concern. I can't believe they're doing this. Everyone knows you run this place. Things change, Linda, I said, wrapping the coffee mug in tissue paper. Sometimes that's for the best. As I packed, I quietly removed a small USB drive from my computer and slipped it into my purse. 15 years of carefully maintained client notes, vendor contacts, procedural documents, and password lists. Information that wasn't technically confidential, but was absolutely essential for day-to-day operations. Information that only existed in my files. Ms. Thompson. Jessica's voice made me look up. She was standing by my desk, arms crossed. You'll need to surrender your key card and parking pass. I handed them over without a word, then picked up my small cardboard box of belongings. I do hope you find something more suitable to your skill level, she added, the fake concern in her voice not hiding the smugness underneath. I paused at the elevator, turned back to look at the office that had been my second home for 15 years, and spoke loud enough for everyone to hear. Miss Davis, I'm sure you'll do just fine without me. After all, how hard can it be? The elevator doors closed on her confused expression. That was Friday afternoon. By Monday morning, the real show was about to begin. I spent the weekend at my mother's bedside, reading to her from her favorite romance novels and thinking about what came next. For the first time in 15 years, I didn't check my work email. I didn't worry about Monday morning's schedule or whether anyone remembered to return Mrs. Henderson's call. It felt strange, liberating, but strange. Monday morning, I slept until 8 a.m., practically a luxury. I made myself a proper breakfast, called my mother's care facility to check in, and then settled down with a cup of coffee to watch the news. My phone didn't ring once. Tuesday, I got my hair done. A real cut and style at a salon I'd been promising myself I'd try for years, but never had time for. The stylist, a young woman named Carmen, chatted about her business classes. I'm thinking about getting my MBA, she said, working product through my hair. But it seemed so expensive, and I don't know if it's worth it if I want to run my own salon. Education is never wasted, I told her. Sometimes it just takes time to find the right opportunity to use it. Wednesday, I visited my mother. She was having a good day, more alert than usual. You look different, baby, she said, studying my face with those blue eyes that were still sharp despite everything else that was failing. Relaxed. I left my job, Mom, I said. Well, they let me go. She nodded slowly. About time. You were too good for them anyway. She patted my hand with fingers that trembled only slightly. What's next? I'm not sure yet, but I think something better is coming. She smiled. It always does, Maggie. It always does. Thursday morning, my phone finally rang. Margaret, it's Linda from accounting. Her voice was strained, almost panicked. I know you don't work here anymore, but we have a problem. What kind of problem? The Henderson Group called 3 times yesterday, asking for their contact person. Jessica tried to handle it, but they hung up on her. They're threatening to cancel their contract if they don't speak to someone who actually knows what's going on by end of business today. The Henderson Group. 40% of Davis Corporation's annual revenue. The account I'd personally managed for 12 years, flying to Chicago quarterly, remembering Mrs. Henderson's grandson's birthday, knowing exactly how they liked their reports formatted and delivered. That does sound like a problem, I said calmly. Margaret, please. I know Jessica was awful to you, but this company employs 23 people. If we lose Henderson... Linda, I don't work there anymore. Remember? I'm irrelevant. There was a long pause. Margaret, what do you want me to tell them? Tell them to call Jessica. She's in charge of operations now. I hung up, but I didn't feel the satisfaction I'd expected. These weren't just numbers on a balance sheet. These were people I'd worked alongside for years. People with mortgages and families and dreams. But sometimes, the only way to prove your worth is to let people feel your absence. Friday afternoon, the calls started coming in earnest. First Linda again, then Marcus from IT, then even Mr. Davis himself. But I was grocery shopping, my phone on silent, taking my time choosing between different brands of pasta sauce like I had all the time in the world. Because suddenly, I did. When I finally listened to my voicemails that evening, there were 7 of them, each one more desperate than the last. Margaret, it's Richard Davis. I think there's been a misunderstanding. Can you call me back as soon as possible? Ms. Thompson, this is Jessica Davis. We need to discuss some transitional issues. Please call the office immediately. Margaret, it's Linda again. The Kowalski account is asking about some invoice discrepancy from 2019. Jessica can't find the files. Please call back. I deleted them all without returning a single call. Saturday morning, I was having coffee on my small balcony when my doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw Richard Davis himself, looking haggard and older than his 62 years. He was holding a manila folder and shifting nervously from foot to foot. I opened the door, but didn't invite him in. Margaret, he said, relief flooding his face. Thank God. We need to talk. Mr. Davis, I don't work for you anymore, remember? Your daughter made that very clear. His face crumpled. Margaret, I had no idea what Jessica was planning. If I had known, you would have what? Stopped her? You gave her operational authority, Mr. Davis. She used it. Please, he said, and I'd never heard him sound so desperate. Can we at least talk? 5 minutes? I studied his face for a long moment, then stepped aside to let him in. He sat heavily on my small couch, the manila folder clutched in his hands. We've lost the Henderson Group, he said without preamble, and Kowalski Industries. Peterson is threatening to pull out. Our IT system crashed yesterday, and Marcus can't figure out the backup protocols. I poured myself another cup of coffee, deliberately taking my time. That sounds very stressful. Margaret, in 1 week, you've cost us nearly $3 million in revenue. I turned to face him, coffee cup in hand. Mr. Davis, I haven't done anything. I've been unemployed for a week. I've spent my time getting a haircut, visiting my mother, and grocery shopping. How exactly have I cost you anything? He stared at me for a long moment, and I saw the realization dawn in his eyes. For 15 years, he'd taken for granted that everything would just work, that problems would be solved, relationships maintained, crises averted. He'd never asked how or by whom. You were never just a secretary, he said quietly. No, I agreed. I wasn't. Jessica doesn't understand. She thinks business is about spreadsheets and efficiency metrics. She doesn't realize that relationships take years to build and seconds to destroy. She's young, I said diplomatically. She'll learn. Will you come back? The question burst out of him like he'd been holding it in all week. Whatever you want. Title, salary, benefits. Just name it. I sat down across from him, setting my coffee cup on the small table between us. Mr. Davis, I need you to understand something. For 15 years, I've been solving problems, managing relationships, and keeping your company running smoothly. And for 15 years, I've been invisible, not just to you, but to everyone. Jessica didn't invent the idea that I was just a secretary. She just said it out loud. He opened his mouth to protest, but I held up a hand. I'm not angry, I continued, but I'm also not desperate. I have options now that I didn't have before. What do you mean? I smiled, thinking of the 3 voicemails from headhunters that had come in yesterday alone. Word traveled fast in business circles. A Harvard MBA with 15 years of operational experience and a track record of keeping major accounts happy. I was suddenly very popular. I mean, Mr. Davis, that your daughter did me a favor. She forced me to remember who I really am. He leaned forward, the manila folder still clutched in his hands. Margaret, I'm begging you. Just tell me what it will take. I considered for a moment, thinking about my mother, about the years I'd sacrificed, about the potential I'd buried under other people's expectations. I'll think about it, I said finally, but if I come back, things will be different. Anything, he said immediately. I'll need to speak with Jessica first. His face paled. Margaret, she's having a difficult time accepting that she made a mistake. Then she's going to have an even more difficult time with what comes next. I stood up, signaling the end of our conversation. He rose reluctantly, still clutching his folder. What's in there? I asked, nodding toward the manila folder. He looked down at it like he'd forgotten he was holding it. Job offers, he said quietly, for you. 3 of them came in this week. Apparently word got out about your availability. I took the folder, feeling its weight. 3 companies, 3 chances to start over, 3 opportunities to finally be valued for what I really brought to the table. I'll be in touch, Mr. Davis, I said, opening the door for him. After he left, I sat back down with my coffee and opened the folder. 3 job offers, all from companies I'd only dreamed of working for, all offering salaries that were double what I'd been making, all wanting to meet with me as soon as possible. For the first time in 15 years, I held all the cards, and Jessica Davis was about to learn that underestimating someone can be the most expensive mistake you'll ever make. The phone calls started at 6 a.m. Monday morning. I let them ring through to voicemail while I sipped my coffee and reviewed the 3 job offers spread across my kitchen table. Each one more tempting than the last. Senior Operations Manager at Henderson Global. Yes, the same Henderson whose account Davis Corporation had just lost. Director of Client Relations at Morrison Industries. And the most intriguing of all, Chief Operating Officer at a boutique consulting firm that specialized in corporate turnarounds. By 8 a.m., there were 12 missed calls from Davis Corporation. By 9 a.m., my doorbell was ringing insistently. This time, it wasn't Richard Davis standing on my doorstep. It was Jessica, and she looked like she hadn't slept in days. Her usually perfect hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail. Her designer suit wrinkled, and there were dark circles under her eyes that no amount of concealer could hide. "We need to talk," she said without preamble. I leaned against the doorframe, not inviting her in. "Do we? Don't play games with me, Margaret." Her voice cracked slightly on my name. "I know what you're doing." "And what exactly am I doing?" "You're sabotaging us. Henderson, Kowalski, Peterson, they're all asking specifically for you. You're telling them not to work with us." I laughed, genuinely amused. "Jessica, I haven't spoken to a single client. I've been busy interviewing for new positions. Speaking of which, I held up the Morrison Industries offer letter. They're offering me $90,000 to start, plus benefits and profit sharing. Quite a step up from being irrelevant, don't you think?" Her face went white. "You can't be serious." "Why not? You made it very clear that Davis Corporation doesn't need me, so I'm finding somewhere that does." "Margaret, please." The word seemed to physically pain her. "The company is hemorrhaging money. If we lose any more accounts..." "That sounds like a management problem, not a Margaret problem." She closed her eyes, taking a shaky breath. When she opened them again, I saw something I'd never seen before in Jessica Davis: genuine fear. "What do you want?" she asked quietly. Now we were getting somewhere. "I want you to tell me exactly what you think went wrong." "I don't understand." "Humor me. Walk me through your first week running operations. What happened?" She shifted uncomfortably. "Henderson called Monday morning asking for their usual contact. I explained that I was now handling their account and offered to help with whatever they needed. And they hung up. I called back, but they wouldn't take my calls. Then Kowalski called, asking about some invoice from 2019 that they claimed had been handled incorrectly. I couldn't find any record of it in our standard filing system." "Where did you look?" "The shared drive, the accounting database. I even had Marcus check the backup servers." I nodded slowly. "What else?" "Peterson's payment was 3 days late, and when I called to inquire, they said they were reconsidering the relationship due to recent changes in personnel. The Yamamoto Group, a client we've had for 8 years, sent a formal letter stating they were terminating their contract effective immediately." "Did any of them give specific reasons?" Jessica's jaw tightened. "They all said the same thing, that they had a personal relationship with their previous contact and weren't interested in starting over with someone new." "I see. And what did you conclude from all this?" "That you somehow turned them against us, that you're deliberately sabotaging the company out of spite." I studied her face for a long moment. Even now, even with the evidence staring her in the face, she couldn't see it. "Jessica, let me ask you something. In business school, Did they teach you about relationship capital? Of course. It's the value created through trust and personal connections over time. Good. Now, how long do you think it takes to build meaningful relationship capital with a major client? She frowned. It depends on the complexity of the relationship, but generally, several years for full trust and integration. And how long does it take to destroy that capital? Her frown deepened. Usually, one significant breach of trust or major service failure. Excellent. Now, when you fired me, what did you tell these clients about the transition? We didn't inform them directly. We assumed they would be contacted as needed when they called in. The pieces were starting to click together behind her eyes, but she wasn't there yet. Jessica, Henderson Group wasn't just a client to me. I flew to Chicago 4 times a year for their quarterly reviews. I remembered that Mrs. Henderson's grandson played Little League and always asked about his games. When their CFO's mother died 2 years ago, I sent flowers and a handwritten note. When they had that supply chain crisis in 2020, I worked 18-hour days for 3 weeks to help them find alternative suppliers. Her face was getting paler by the minute. Kowalski Industries, that 2019 invoice issue. There was a billing error that our accounting department never caught. I discovered it during a routine review, flew to Milwaukee, and spent 2 days working with their team to restructure the payment terms. I saved both companies from a legal dispute and ate the cost personally to preserve the relationship. The documentation isn't in our standard system because it was sensitive and I kept it in encrypted files. Oh God, she whispered. Peterson pays late every quarter because they have cash flow issues from their own clients. Instead of charging penalty fees like our contract allows, I worked out an arrangement where they pay a slightly higher rate in exchange for flexible timing. It's not in writing anywhere. It's based on trust built over 7 years of working together. Jessica's knees seemed to give out, and she leaned heavily against my doorframe. The Yamamoto Group, I continued relentlessly, were my most challenging client. They're traditional, formal, and they don't trust easily. It took me 3 years just to get them to return my phone calls. When they signed with us, Mr. Yamamoto specifically requested that all communications go through me personally. Not the company, me. But why didn't any of this information exist in our systems? Her voice was barely above a whisper. Because relationship management isn't data entry, Jessica. It's personal connections, unwritten understandings, and 15 years of proving that someone's trust isn't misplaced. She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her MBA training warring with the reality of what I was telling her. You're saying that when I fired you, I didn't just lose a secretary. I lost 15 years of relationship capital with our most important clients. Now you're getting it. But she searched for words. That's incredibly risky business practice. What if you'd quit? What if you'd been hit by a bus? We'd have been in the same situation. I smiled grimly. Jessica, I tried to document processes. I wrote procedure manuals that nobody read. I offered to train other people on client relationships, but everyone assumed that was secretary work beneath their notice. For 15 years, I've been trying to protect this company from exactly what's happening right now. The silence stretched between us. I could almost see her recalculating everything she thought she knew about business, about management, about the value of the people around her. Margaret, she said finally, I made a mistake. Yes, you did. A huge mistake. Yes, I cost the company millions of dollars because I was too arrogant to understand what you actually did here. That's a fair assessment. She took a shaky breath. What's it going to take to fix this? That depends. Are you asking as someone who wants to clean up her mess, or as someone who genuinely wants to learn how to run a company? Both. God, both. I stepped aside, finally letting her into my apartment. She looked around with obvious surprise. I could see her taking in the books on business strategy, the framed Harvard diploma on the wall, the carefully organized workspace in the corner. You have an MBA, she said, staring at the diploma. Harvard, 2009. I was planning to use it too, before my mother got sick. She turned to face me, and for the first time since I'd known her, Jessica Davis looked truly humble. I don't know anything, do I? You know theory. You know the textbook answers. But you don't know how to manage people, because you've never had to depend on anyone else's expertise. Will you teach me? The question caught me off guard. Not because she asked, but because of how she asked. There was no entitlement in her voice, no assumption that I owed her anything. Just a genuine request from someone who'd finally realized how much she didn't know. That depends on a few things, I said carefully. Name them. First, you need to understand that if I come back, I'm not coming back as your father's secretary. I'm coming back as an equal partner in rebuilding what you've broken. She nodded quickly. Whatever title you want. Vice President of Operations. Equity stake in the company. Decision-making authority on all client relationships. Done. Second, you're going to personally call every client we've lost and apologize. Not corporate speak, not blame shifting. A genuine apology for the disruption and a request for a second chance. Her face paled, but she nodded. Okay. Third, you're going to spend the next 6 months learning this business from the ground up. You'll shadow me on client calls, attend every meeting, and ask questions when you don't understand something instead of pretending you do. I can do that. And fourth, I paused, making sure she was really listening. You're going to apologize to every single employee in that office for the way you've treated them since you arrived. You've been acting like they're obstacles to your success instead of resources to help you succeed. She closed her eyes, and I saw her throat work as she swallowed hard. Some of them probably hate me. Some of them do. But most of them just want to do their jobs without feeling like they're walking on eggshells. And if I do all this, you'll come back? I looked at the job offers still spread across my kitchen table. 90,000 at Morrison Industries. The COO position that would finally let me use my full skill set. The chance to start fresh somewhere that would value me from day one. Then I thought about Linda from accounting, who'd worked there for 12 years and still got excited about the company picnic every summer. About Marcus in IT, who'd taught himself programming because he loved solving problems. About the 21 other people whose livelihoods depended on Davis Corporation surviving this crisis. I'll come back, I said. But Jessica, if you ever, and I mean ever, treat me or anyone else in that office like we're disposable again, I'll walk out that door and take half your client base with me. And next time, I won't be as generous about giving you a second chance. I understand. Do you? Because this isn't just about business theory anymore. This is about real people with real families depending on you to make smart decisions. I get it, Margaret. I really do. I studied her face, looking for any sign that this was just damage control, that she was telling me what I wanted to hear. But what I saw was genuine remorse and something that might have been the beginning of wisdom. All right then, let's go save your company. The next morning, I walked into Davis Corporation for the first time in 2 weeks wearing a new suit and carrying a briefcase instead of a purse. The office went dead silent as the elevator doors opened. 23 pairs of eyes turned toward me, expressions ranging from relief to curiosity to barely concealed hope. "Good morning, everyone," I said, my voice carrying across the suddenly quiet space. "I'm back." The applause started slowly. Linda from accounting clapping enthusiastically, then Marcus from IT joining in, then others until the entire office was clapping and cheering. I felt tears prick my eyes, but blinked them back. There would be time for emotions later. Right now, we had work to do. Jessica emerged from the conference room, and I could see she'd spent time preparing for this moment. Her hair was perfect again, her suit pressed, but there was something different in her posture. Less arrogance, more uncertainty. "Everyone," she said, her voice slightly shaky, "I have an announcement. Margaret Thompson is returning to Davis Corporation as our new Vice President of Operations." More applause, and this time I let myself smile. "Additionally," Jessica continued, and I could see her hands trembling slightly, "I owe all of you an apology. Over the past month, I've made decisions based on assumptions rather than understanding. I've treated many of you poorly, and I've nearly destroyed relationships that took years to build." The office had gone quiet again, but it was a different kind of quiet, attentive rather than fearful. "I'm asking for your patience as I learn how to do this job properly, and I'm grateful that Margaret has agreed to help me figure out how to fix what I've broken." She looked directly at me then. "Where do we start?" I set my briefcase down on what used to be my secretary desk and was now apparently my VP workspace. "We start with Henderson Group. Linda, can you get Mrs. Henderson on the phone? We're going to Chicago." 3 hours later, Jessica and I were on a plane to O'Hare, and I was watching her frantically take notes as I explained 15 years of client relationship nuances. "Mrs. Henderson likes her coffee black but keeps sugar packets in her desk drawer," I said. "She'll offer you coffee, and you should accept, even if you don't want any. She's proud of her coffee service." "Why does that matter?" "Because business isn't just about numbers, Jessica. It's about people. Mrs. Henderson isn't just buying our services. She's buying our respect for her and her company." "But that seems so personal." "It is personal. That's the point." When we arrived at Henderson Group's downtown Chicago offices, I could see Jessica's nerves ramping up. This was her first real test, and we both knew it. "Mrs. Henderson?" Eleanor, though she insisted I call her Ellie, greeted us in the lobby herself instead of sending an assistant. She was a small woman in her 70s, with silver hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Margaret, dear," she said, embracing me warmly. "I was so worried when that young woman called and told us you were no longer with Davis Corporation. There was some confusion, Ellie, but it's been resolved. I'd like you to meet Jessica Davis, Richard's daughter and our new operational director." Eleanor's handshake was firm, but her smile was reserved. "Ms. Davis, I understand you're taking over some of Margaret's responsibilities." "Actually, Mrs. Henderson," Jessica said, and I was proud to hear her voice steady, "I'm here to apologize. I made some serious errors in judgment recently, and one of them was not understanding how important Margaret's relationships with clients like yourself really are." Eleanor's eyebrows rose slightly. "Go on." I treated Margaret like she was just administrative support when she was actually the foundation of our client services. When I let her go, I wasn't just making a personnel decision. I was breaking 15 years of trust that she'd built with you and your team. I see. Mrs. Henderson, I'm not asking you to trust me the way you trust Margaret. I haven't earned that yet. But I'm asking for a chance to prove that Davis Corporation is still the company you chose to work with, even if I'm still learning how to run it properly. Eleanor was quiet for a long moment, studying Jessica's face. Then she turned to me. What do you think, Margaret? Is she worth a second chance? I think she's finally asking the right questions, I said. And I think she's prepared to do the work to earn the right answers. Eleanor smiled then, the first genuine warmth she'd shown since we arrived. Well then, let's go get some coffee and talk about how to move forward. 2 hours later, we walked out of Henderson Group with a renewed contract and a plan for quarterly reviews that would include both Jessica and me. As we waited for our cab to the airport, Jessica turned to me with an expression I couldn't quite read. That was terrifying, she said. Good. If it wasn't scary, it wouldn't be worth doing. She could have said no. She could have ended the relationship entirely. Yes, she could have. But she didn't, because of you, because of the trust you built with her over 15 years, and because of the respect you showed her today. Ellie Henderson has been in business for 40 years, Jessica. She can spot a fake apology from across the room. What you gave her was real. Jessica was quiet for the rest of the trip back to Davis Corporation, but I could see her processing everything she'd observed. The way Eleanor's assistant had smiled when I remembered to ask about her daughter's wedding. The casual conversation about the Cubs' chances this season that had nothing to do with business, but everything to do with relationship. The way Eleanor had relaxed once she saw that Jessica was genuinely interested in learning rather than just damage control. Over the next 6 months, we repeated that scene a dozen times. Phone calls to apologize, flights to meet face-to-face with angry clients, long conversations where Jessica asked questions, and I explained not just what to do, but why. She wasn't perfect. She still had moments where her MBA training kicked in, and she tried to solve relationship problems with spreadsheets. But she was learning, and more importantly, she was listening. The office culture began to change too. People stopped walking on eggshells around Jessica and started treating her like a colleague instead of a threat. Linda started including her in the monthly birthday celebrations. Marcus actually laughed at one of her jokes during a staff meeting. And slowly, carefully, we rebuilt what had been broken. Margaret, Jessica said one evening as we worked late preparing for a client presentation, can I ask you something personal? Sure. Why did you stay? At Davis Corporation, I mean. With your education and experience, you could have been running your own company years ago. I looked up from the financial projections we'd been reviewing. It was a question I'd asked myself many times over the years. Because sometimes the right choice isn't the obvious choice, I said finally. My mother needed me. This job gave me the stability and benefits to take care of her. And honestly, I liked the work. I liked solving problems and helping people succeed. But weren't you frustrated? Being treated like just an assistant when you were clearly so much more? Sometimes. But Jessica, here's what I learned. You can't control how other people see you, but you can control the value you create. I may have been just a secretary on paper, but I knew what I was really worth. And eventually, When it mattered, that value became impossible to ignore. She nodded thoughtfully. I almost destroyed everything because I couldn't see past the job title. You made a mistake, but you owned it, and you did the work to fix it. That's what good leaders do. Is that what I am now? A good leader? I smiled. Ask me again in a year, but you're definitely on the right track. The next morning, I got a call from my mother's care facility. She was having one of her good days, alert and asking for me. I found her sitting in the sunroom, looking out at the garden with a peaceful expression. There's my successful daughter, she said as I sat down beside her. How did you know about the promotion, Mom? I know more than you think, Maggie. That nice young woman came to see me last week. Jessica? She wanted to thank me for raising such a strong daughter. Said she learned more from you in 6 months than she did in 2 years of business school. I felt my throat tighten. She said that? She also said something else. Mom reached over and took my hand with fingers that barely trembled now. She said you saved her company, but more than that, you saved her from becoming someone she didn't want to be. Mom, I'm proud of you, baby. Not for the fancy title or the money, but because you never forgot who you are, even when other people couldn't see it. 6 months later, Davis Corporation posted its best financial year in company history. We'd not only won back every client we'd lost, but we'd gained 7 new ones. The company culture had transformed from fearful to collaborative, and employee retention was at an all-time high. I was reviewing quarterly reports in my new corner office when Jessica knocked on my door. Got a minute? She asked. Always. What's up? She sat down across from my desk with an expression that was part nervous, part excited. Dad's officially retiring next month. The board meeting is Thursday. How do you feel about that? Terrified, excited, ready. She paused. I have a proposal for you. I'm listening. I want you to be my business partner, officially. Equal equity, equal decision-making, co-CEOs. I stared at her. Jessica, I know it's not traditional, but nothing about our relationship has been traditional. We work well together, and I don't want to do this without you. What does your father think? He said it's the smartest business decision I've ever made. I thought about the scared, arrogant young woman who'd fired me 8 months ago. Then I looked at the confident, thoughtful leader sitting across from me now. Can I think about it? Of course. But Margaret, I need you to know something. Firing you was the worst mistake I've ever made professionally. But it was also the best thing that ever happened to me personally, because it forced me to see what real leadership looks like. That evening, I visited my mother one more time. She was weaker now, but her mind was sharp. What should I do, Mom? I asked, telling her about Jessica's offer. What does your heart tell you? That we could build something really special together. Then what's holding you back? Fear, I guess. Fear that it won't work. Fear that I'll lose myself in someone else's dream again. Mom squeezed my hand. Maggie, you spent 15 years taking care of me, and you never once complained. You gave up your own dreams to make sure I had everything I needed. Now it's time to dream your own dreams. But what if? No what ifs, baby. You've earned the right to take risks. And if it doesn't work out, you'll figure out something else. You always do. She smiled. That same proud smile I'd been trying to earn my whole life. Besides, I have a feeling that girl needs you more than she knows, and maybe you need her too. 3 weeks later, the local business journal ran a front-page story. Davis Corporation announces revolutionary co-CEO structure. The article featured a photo of Jessica and me shaking hands in front of the company logo, both of us smiling. But my favorite part was the quote they used from Jessica. "The best leaders aren't the ones who have all the answers. They're the ones who know how to find the right people and listen to what they have to say." Margaret Thompson, once just a secretary, was finally exactly where she belonged.